The most unpopular Prime Minister ever.
She's not wrong, is she? Topped only by Liz Truss during her 45-day premiership.
I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
Keir Starmer began his time as Prime Minister with a so-called landslide victory.
We did it!
In July 2024, reaching an approval rating of plus 11% during his very short honeymoon period. But within 6 months, that optimism has crumbled completely.
Labour would lose 87 seats to the Conservatives, 67 to Reform, and 26 to the SNP if they had an election today.
Here, in January 2025, his approval rating has collapsed to minus 47%, marking one of the most dramatic declines in modern political history. Let's quickly break down some of the key failures that have left millions of British citizens, including Labour MPs, feeling betrayed, and track the negative correlations in government approval rating. On the 29th of July 2024, a horrific attack was carried out on a group of young girls at a Taylor Swift dance class. Keir Starmer's response just wasn't good enough. He remained silent, while concerned, grieving locals heckled him as he paid his respects. Not only were the public then shamed for apparently spreading misinformation, much of which later turned out to be true, but the focus quickly shifted to smearing anyone concerned with important national security issues as far right.
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend.
Not only were the public silenced, but even Parliament would later be silenced on asking questions about the horrific attack.
It's important that nothing is said in this House.
Of course, the winter fuel payment cuts were announced at the end of July as well, and during the ongoing arguments about this, including objections from a large portion of Labour MPs, Starmer's approval rating was affected significantly.
It's the wrong decision, he needs to do a U-turn and listen to what people are saying. It's the wrong choice.
Moving into August, we saw the poor handling of the riots, which demonstrated the clear lack of understanding of the British public's concerns. Obviously, I don't condone rioting. Any sensible person would condemn destroying their neighbourhood, but it certainly showed the fragile state of the country, as pointed out by Douglas Murray.
We cannot be in a situation in our society, in Britain or anywhere else, where we are only one madman's attack from responses like this happening.
Videos from the various riots circulated, demonstrating clear two-tier policing, with heavy-handed policing and fast-tracked court cases seemingly directed at concerned white British people. And you didn't even have to take part in the riots. People were fast-tracked to prison, for sometimes even sharing apparent misinformation.
They searched me, arrested me, and held me for 36 hours in a concrete cell with a concrete bed, like a terrorist.
I wonder if these expectations from the Prime Minister fueled that.
And I'm now expecting substantive sentencing before the end of this week. That should send a very powerful message.
Compare that with the relaxed approach to dealing with people like this.
We need to hold their throats and get rid of them all!
And you can start to understand why the British public feels so alienated by this government. Through September and October, Keir Starmer would see his approval rating drop to minus 30. Causing upset by suspending arms exports to Israel.
It feels as though Israel is being punished, pointed at, demonised, and told that they are in breach of humanitarian law.
As well as hiking employer national insurance contributions by £25 billion.
Now, the Prime Minister has refused to rule out an increase in national insurance for employers in the upcoming budget.
Angering businesses already struggling with inflation. The drop in approval ratings seemed to reflect the growing unease around weak foreign policy and tax policies
over Hong Kong. They also can't understand why we would surrender the sovereignty of these islands on an advisory judgment from a pretty obscure court.
That went back on promises within Labour's manifesto. Autumn budget came at the end of October.
To fix the foundations and deliver change.
Bringing the changes to inheritance tax for farmers, leading to huge protests.
They are totally, completely and utterly wrong. They haven't got a clue.
In November, amongst continued debates and protests on some of the topics mentioned already, Ukraine fired a UK-supplied Storm Shadow missile into Russia. A controversial decision for many of us in the UK, and a step further than offering humanitarian aid, at a time where our own army is decreasing in strength, with no apparent plan to increase spend on military and defence. By December, all of these issues seem to align.
Mr. Speaker, he's not fixing any foundations, he's making everything worse.
With the general feeling that the government isn't here to put our country first.
Our manifesto was clear.
For example, the inheritance tax initiative is predicted to raise £500 million over the course of the next year, while over £500 million is planned to be spent on foreign farming and environmental programmes. And here we are, with a record low approval rating of minus 47%.
Now, I know there's still so much more to do.
It appears the government has no real plan to tackle border security and radicalisation, no real plan for solid economic management, and generally time and money being spent on initiatives that don't align with what the British public need. The Prime Minister talks about fixing the foundations a lot. I believe the foundations of a successful government is a government that bravely puts their country first. We've seen it with Donald Trump's win. The people of Britain aren't on board with the globalist agenda, while our country becomes a harder and more dangerous place to live in. What do you think 2025 has in store for us?